O God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space. Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2.
But they will teach us that eternity is the standing still of the present time, a nunc stans, as the schools call it, which neither they nor anyone else understand, no more than they would a hic stans for an infinite greatness of place. Leviathan, Act 4, 46.
On the burning February morning, Beatriz Viterbo died, after braving an agony that never for a single moment gave way to self-pity or fear. I noticed that the billboards around Constitution Plaza were advertising some new brand or other of American cigarettes. The fact pained me, for I realized that the wide and ceaseless universe was already slipping away from her, and that this slight change was the first of an endless series. The universe may change, but not me, I thought with a certain sad vanity.
I knew that at times my fruitless devotion had annoyed her. Now that she was dead, I could devote myself to her memory, without hope, but also without humiliation. I recalled that the 30th of April was her birthday. On that day, to visit her house on Garay Street and pay my respects to her father and to Carlos Argentino, her first cousin, would be an irreproachable and perhaps unavoidable act of politeness. Once again, I would wait in the twilight of the small, cluttered drawing room. Once again, I would study the details of her many photographs. Beatriz Viterbo in profile and in full color. Beatriz wearing a mask during the Carnival of 1921. Beatriz at her first communion. Beatriz on the day of her wedding to Roberto Alessandri. Beatriz, soon after her divorce, at a luncheon at the Turf Club. Beatriz at a seaside resort in Quilmes with Delia San Marco Porcel and Carlos Argentino. Beatriz with the Pekingese lapdog given her by Villegas Jaedo. Beatriz, front and three-quarter views, smiling, hand on her chin. I would not be forced, as in the past, to justify my presence with modest offerings of books. Books whose pages I finally learned to cut beforehand so as not to find out months later that they lay unopened.
Beatriz Viterbo died in 1929. From that time on, I never let a 30th of April go by without a visit to her house. I used to make my appearance at 7:15 sharp and stay on for some 25 minutes. Each year I arrived a little later and stayed a little longer. In 1933, a torrential downpour coming to my aid, they were obliged to ask me for dinner. Naturally, I took advantage of that lucky precedent. In 1934, I arrived just after 8 with one of those large Santa Fe sugared cakes, and quite matter-of-factly, I stayed to dinner. It was in this way, on these melancholy and vainly erotic anniversaries, that I came into the gradual confidences of Carlos Argentino Danelli.
Beatriz had been tall, frail, slightly stooped. In her walk, there was, maybe oxymoron may be allowed, a kind of uncertain grace, a hint of expectancy. Carlos Argentino was pink-faced, overweight, gray-haired, fine-featured. He held a minor position in an unreadable library out on the edge of the south side of Buenos Aires. He was authoritarian, but also unimpressive. Until only recently, he took advantage of his nights and holidays to stay at home. At a remove of 2 generations, the Italian S and demonstrative Italian gestures still survived in him.
His mental activity was continuous, deeply felt, far-ranging, and all in all meaningless. He dealt in pointless analogies and in trivial scruples. He had, as did Beatriz, large, beautiful, finely shaped hands. For several months, he seemed to be obsessed with Paul Fort, less with his ballads than with the idea of a towering reputation.
He is the prince of poets, Daneri would repeat fatuously. You will belittle him in vain, but no, not even the most venomous of your shafts will graze him.
On the 30th of April, 1941, along with a sugared cake, I allowed myself to add a bottle of Argentine cognac. Carlos Argentino tasted it, and pronounced it interesting. And after a few drinks, launched into a glorification of modern man. I view him, he said with a certain unaccountable excitement, in his inner sanctum as though in his castle tower, supplied with telephones, telegraphs, phonographs, wireless sets, motion picture screens, slide projectors, handbooks, bulletins, glossaries. For a man so equipped, actual travel is superfluous. Our 20th century had inverted the story of Muhammad and the mountain. Nowadays, the mountain came to the modern Muhammad. So foolish did his ideas seem to me, so pompous and so drawn out as exposition, that I immediately linked it to literature and asked him why he didn't write them down. As might be foreseen, he answered that he had already done so. That these ideas and others no less striking had already found their way into the primo, or the augural canto, or more simply, the prologue canto of the poem on which he had been working out for many years, alone, without publicity, without fanfare, supported only by those twin staffs universally known as work and solitude. First, he opened the floodgates of his fancy. Then, taking up hand tools, he resorted to the file. The poem was entitled The Earth. It consisted of a description of the planet and, of course, lacked no amount of picturesque digressions and bold apostrophes.
I asked him to read me a passage, if only a short one. He opened a drawer of his writing table, drew out a thick stack of papers, sheets of a large pad imprinted with the letterhead of the Juan Crisóstomo Lafinul Library, and, with ringing satisfaction, declaimed,
He visto como el griego, las urbes de los hombres, los trabajos, los días de varia luz, el hambre. No corrijo los hechos, no falseo los nombres. El voyage que narro es autor de ma chambre.
Mine eyes, as did the Greeks, have known men's towns and fame, the works, the days and life that fades to amber. I do not change a fact or falsify a name. The voyage I set down is auteur de ma chambre. From any angle, and a greatly interesting stanza, he said, giving his verdict. The opening line wins the applause of the professor, the academician, the Hellenist. To say nothing of the would-be scholar, a considerable sector of the public. The second flows from Homer to Hesiod. Generous homage at the very outset to the father of didactic poetry, not without rejuvenating a process whose roots go back to scripture. Enumeration, congeries, conglomeration. The third, Baroque, decadent, example of the cult of pure form, consists of two equal hemistichs. The fourth, frankly bilingual, assures me the